can coaching help my perfectionism?
Like be more perfect, like be be
I
more
would think
awesome.
not. I would think to like
Like
maybe let go of perfectionism.
like be more perfect than we already are. Well, it helps you achieve better, perfect, more perfect goals. So that's good, right? What else does coaching do? Uh, I feel like perfectionism. I think uh, it's an interesting thing. I think we all have it in different ways, uh, and it's. I view perfectionism more as a tool. Like when like it's sometimes really helpful to have that mode, and I think what stops people from moving away from some of like what stops people from moving away from, we call it these modes, is the judgment that we put on ourselves when we are in that mode. And we all have different modes that I feel like we want to not emphasize or use, or they might show up in default situations that are uncomfortable or not optimal. And so the judgment that whenever someone brings this to our attention or we judge ourselves that we're in that space, I think inhibits movement away from that space. It's good to be alerted to it and say, okay, whoa, I'm in that space again. And then instead of ask the question, how do I get out of it? The question then is, how can I use this? Like, what's
Mm,
useful about this? What's not useful about this? And then if there's a way to shift, like once you acknowledge useful, not useful, there seems to be an internal shift that happens because the judgment falls away and then you put curiosity in place. And that's essentially the coaching process. Like I think this is one of the mechanisms why the coaching process is so powerful. It's because the coach, they are able to replace that judgment. Like when you are listening to your client and your client brings something up that they want to change, if your default reaction isn't, oh, okay, let's change it right away. Like we need to rush in there and get this changed for you so you feel the value of coaching and help you make this decision or help you move forward with this thing or in all of those kind of things like that. The meta message is, oh yeah, we have to change this immediately. This is like, not good. If the coach's default reaction instead is, okay, let's be with this for a little bit of time. Let's just be
mm.
with. So be with perfectionism. I'm in my own mind being with it too. What comes up? What's there's a curiosity there. And yeah, it's not fun. This doesn't mean that we're taking the stress of it, the anxiety of it lightly. Like it's just that people have already done enough stress and anxiety on their own. It's like go for it.
Mhm.
Like it's there if you want it. I get there too, and the coaching process has helped me replace it with curiosity, and it does feel like a constant practice. And I feel like the space that I'm in where the organization is at is there. I mean, it's like it's pretty demanding, and I feel like the perfectionism comes into play. And sometimes it's a useful tool, like when you're editing something or trying to get something out that really needs it, deserves it. And sometimes it just gets in the way. I think coaching helps you identify those, make friends with it, use it as a tool, not as a default. It's a hard thing
Yeah,
to do sometimes.
that's really good.
Feels complete.
Yeah, I think being curious about it is such a big deal. I think there's so much learning to why are you heading into this feeling of or this need to be perfect or because none of us can. There's so much freedom too in knowing like none of us are ever going to be perfect. I know that I can grab hold of perfectionism, especially in relationships or connections with others. I'm like, I gotta say the right thing and I gotta do the right thing. And I'm just like, oh, that's so exhausting. So, there's freedom too of knowing we're human and we're going to make mistakes. And it's even curiosity within the mistakes as well. So if you go for something and it doesn't work out, what are you learning about yourself? What are you learning about that process or that thing that you're striving towards? And then what is the learning with the mistake? How do you use it to grow and to learn and this next shift or progress forward or whatever it might be? So I think curiosity is such a good answer to perfectionism. Just be curious about it. And it also allows it allows to either motivate you forward in a healthy direction, or allows you to step back and say, whoo, I don't need to be stressing so much about this. Like, I can chill out a little bit. So I think there's both pieces there too. So that's awesome, John.
I do have one thing I want to add to this. I think that will help too is uh, I think the current education system adds to the pressure, and it doesn't do anyone any favors when it comes to teaching us how to deal with perfectionism, because it has been instilled in us that we want to get that there's a certain standard that can be hit that's 100%, and it's perfectionism requires a couple things, and it requires an idea or an ideal that there is something out there that is actually perfect, that there is something that gets there. And the word perfect itself comes from a Latin word, facere, which means to do. And it's where you get the word manufacturing, right? And this kind of thing means that with the prefix per, it means through completion. So perfect really just means complete. And I think it's helpful to think of, the etymology of it, because it shifts it a little bit. It realizes, oh yeah, I think that when people say I'm a perfectionist, I think what they're saying on a deep level is there's my mind, I create an ideal of what I'm trying to accomplish. And then I do things, and then I judge the things. And so in a coaching world, it's helpful to split, like take a concept and then that feels monolithic and split it into its parts and say, okay, so which of these three parts do you get caught up in the most? Is it in the creation of the ideal? Is it in when you find yourself narrating the work that you're doing? Or is it like the judgment that you do after you do the work? Like, which of those three feels like it needs the most attention? And you ask yourself that question, it's fascinating. Like when you really think about, if you were to take any concept that you're wrestling with and break it into three different areas, three different parts, and look at those parts in that way. Perfectionism comes up a lot in coaching sessions, and these are some of the tools I use as a coach to get curious about. But again, you can ask yourself the same questions, right? Which of those three is it? Is it the ideal? Are you holding on to an ideal? Is it the actual narration of the work, or is it the judgment that you feel after? Interesting, right?
Yeah, that's cool.
And I'm also a horrible person to ask about perfectionism, because we had typos in our textbooks for years, and it's just like, okay, so if you're flying an airplane, building it at the same time, and you're expecting yourself to be awesome, if you're building a coaching practice, or you're looking at a website and then you're doing all the things, there might be 5 things on your to-do list, and a reasonable human being can only do 2 out of the 5 well. Pick 2, leave 3. Even that is a challenge. So I think when you're building your own practice, when you're starting up something in an organization, you have to be kind to yourself and focus on the larger thing of the larger mission of what you're after is the most important focal point, and asking yourself, is this good enough to move forward? And if the answer is yes, good, go do the next thing and come back to it. That also takes a lot of pressure off okay, I need to get this done just this one time, perfect. And then like everything else will fall into place. There's no such thing like that I've experienced in business building.
Yeah, and most people they hold themselves back. Like it'll be, oh, okay, I'll finish this in the next month or 2, and it's a year later. And because it hasn't been perfected, no movement has been made forward. So I would encourage, coaches listening to this, if you're starting your business, just go for it. It's okay. Like it's going to be okay, and things are going to change, and you're going to evolve as a coach. Your business is going to evolve as well as you continue. So there's always going to be updates and changes and things anyway. So go for it. Do it. You've been holding back from pushing publish on your website, but it's pretty much there. Just do it now. It'll be okay. And you'll feel so good.